Hey everyone, Sleepy Reader here, ready to spoil Batman Eternal number 20. I couldn't resist. I do spoil Batman Eternal in these focused videos, so if you don't want it spoiled, don't watch. And I can't resist talking about spoiling it, because at the last page, we have the reveal of Spoiler, which we all knew was coming. Anyone who knows anything, and I don't know a lot, but I knew that Stephanie Brown was Spoiler, and she's reintroduced in the New 52 in Batman Eternal, and we've been following her, so we've been waiting for her to turn into the hero Spoiler, presumably not into Batgirl, since we have a Batgirl already. I suppose they could have surprised us by not having her turn into Spoiler, but it seemed kind of inevitable. And that's one of the lame reveals in this issue. I'm kind of not terribly happy with this issue, and it seems like it's full of kind of half-assed reveals of things. So the way they reveal Spoiler at the end comes particularly as a disappointment, just because they haven't built up to it. They've ignored the character of Stephanie Brown for I don't know how many issues. It feels like 6 or 8 issues where she hasn't appeared. And when she does appear, it feels like a whole bunch of stuff has happened to her that we should have known about before, that led her to this decision of becoming Spoiler. I mean, we know that her father's a supervillain who's trying to kill her, so that's part of her motivation. But how she got there is unclear. Maybe they'll backtrack. Maybe there's going to be an issue really devoted to Spoiler, and that will change my opinion on this. But as a whole, the feeling of reading this issue was of a bunch of, I wouldn't say botched, but maybe rushed reveals and rushed sort of endpoints to little bits of plot we had going in this ongoing saga of Batman Eternal. It's ironic because this issue is by the same writer and artist as in the previous issue, and I really liked the job they did there. Things seem to be really clicking, and now with their rush to the ending, so to speak, everything seems to be done more sloppily. Maybe they were also more rushed, along with the fact that they were rushed. They had to finish things in this issue. So, for instance, we get kind of the conclusion of the Batgirl in Rio with her allies catching up to this guy who did the hypnotism trick on James Gordon and made him shoot where he shouldn't have been shooting, which, we learned last issue, I think it was last issue, was this guy named Dr. Falsario, this Brazilian bad guy. And so we have Batwoman chasing him in the rainforest, and then turn the page, and we're revealed he's already dead. Someone shot him. Or maybe someone chopped at him with a sword, actually. And that's pretty much it. She gets back. I'm just skipping ahead. For her story is interspersed throughout. She goes back to the factory where her allies, Batwoman and Red Hood, are, and is just quickly told, well, it's all right that person was shot or killed because we have the evidence anyway. That was conveniently all on these computer disks or computer files that we've made copies of. And so that will presumably exonerate James Gordon at some point in the future. First of all, I just had lots of little complaints about everything in this issue, and each individual complaint perhaps isn't so much, but when you add them all together, it just made me not have a lot of faith in this issue. So with his Batgirl thread, first of all, someone has assassinated the person they were chasing after, and they're just going to let it go. They're the greatest, amongst the greatest detective-type people on the planet, and they're not going to try to find who killed him. There's a killer off in the rainforest right next to this factory. Second of all is don't they want to know who's behind Dr. Falsario? Wouldn't they want to investigate further and learn more? Maybe they will next issue, but it felt like that's wrapped this up. And I already kind of had troubles with the portrayal of Rio. This was described as a factory next to a favela in Rio, but now the factory is next to a rainforest. And I thought there's no rainforest within like 1,000 miles of Rio, and I looked it up, and in fact, there is a rainforest that's probably within 20 or 50 miles of Rio, so it's not quite as crazy. What just happened? My computer just freaked out on me for a second. Pardon me. So it's not quite as crazy to have them at a rainforest, but still kind of throws you off, because a favela are, as far as I know, are these slums that are right sort of scattered throughout the center of Rio de Janeiro, not way out in the suburbs next to rainforests. So it just seemed kind of easy and fake to have the bad guy get killed by someone else, and then, we've got the evidence anyway, so we wrap up that. And not as bad, but the story where Batman and Croc and Bard, Lieutenant Bard, are having an adventure in the sewers going after these supernatural-like beings who seem kind of like what was going on in Arkham, underneath the asylum there with Deacon Blackfire. I thought that it was all going to be connected, and I was enjoying the interaction between these three characters. It's kind of wrapped up in a hasty and, to me, kind of... It's kind of vague what happens. I mean, this is silly, but at first I thought Batman was shooting a gun. It was only when I came back later I noticed there was a little batarang there. He was shooting his batarang. And I think we see Bard shoot someone. Was it Bard? It was unclear what the effect of that was. There was a lot of times where cause and effect were hard to make out here. And the artist and writer who seemed to work so well on the last issue, maybe the artist didn't seem to be conveying everything in frame. So conveniently, the bad guy here just kind of fails and goes away. Let's see, is there more on that plot thread? There seems to be a lot of convenient things to close things up. Bard wants to arrest Killer Croc, and then everything starts collapsing. That's not so bad in and of itself, but it just, when added up with all the other stuff, I think I was quite disappointed that there wasn't more about what was going on in the sewers, and that whoever this bad guy was somebody with 10 eyes or something, was easily defeated. So anyway, that was another dissatisfying kind of thing. And then there was the thread of Commissioner Gordon stopping a prison riot as a prisoner himself, and everything felt a little garbled in there. It was kind of revealed that his cellmate, I don't even know where his cellmate is, just in a bathroom somewhere, putting on his false teeth that turn him into the Lion. And then he joins Commissioner Gordon in fighting the other the other inmates. I just couldn't tell what was going on in all this stuff. Is he biting out their throats? Is that what's going on here? Is he particularly... I don't know. But he helps save Commissioner Gordon, and I don't know. It was kind of cool that it turns out that his cellmate is this old gangster, the Lion, and that was an interesting detail, but it took me a long time to figure that out. So I had to work hard on this issue to figure things out, and they just seemed like they took all these good elements and rushed to the ending so much that they couldn't spin out the good stuff from them. So overall, a disappointing issue, right on the heels of an issue I enjoyed quite a bit by the same creative team. I kind of, in playing my, what do you call it? Not backseat driving, backseat football coaching or whatever, I imagine that the problem is editorial. Things aren't balanced. Things aren't spread out properly. They don't, they're not, the writers are not able to unspool their story the way they should. So that in my mind, the editor, and perhaps, to some extent, it's the fault of the people doing the overarching story because they may be acting a bit like editors, Scott Snyder and James Tinian. But really, these are all the kind of thing that are ultimately the fault of the editor. And there's lots of editors mentioned here. I guess Chris Conroy is the editor. And that may be an editor who had to come in the middle of things. Because I believe the original editor of this series left to go to Marvel because DC's moving to the West Coast. It's ridiculous that I know that much about their business, but that's the nature of the internet, I guess. Computer keeps going to sleep. So, that computer glitch really threw me off. So I'm mad at the editor for not giving this story the room to breathe, coordinating it properly. It might be that if you were the editor, you'd say, well, the writers had plenty of room to breathe and they chose to rush things here. But I do wonder if part of the problem is an editorial changeover and things sort of spinning out of control a bit. And one reason I say that, because a lot of people say, well, this is a weekly series, and it's very true. It's a weekly series, and it's very up and down. Sometimes the issues really click, and sometimes they don't, and that's just part of a weekly series. And I could agree with that, except that this other weekly series I'm reading is smooth sailing. Everything's well balanced. Any plot element that's introduced is fully explored and spooled out. So it's possible to do a weekly series properly. So this is an issue. I won't at all stop buying Batman Eternal, but I have to say, reading this issue, the thought went through my head of maybe I should stop reading Batman Eternal. This issue was an example to me of where a weekly series can go wrong, and is it worth it to keep reading? I think it is, because I've been getting so much pleasure out of it, and there's been plenty of strong issues in the mix. But this did shake me a little bit. So ultimately, my hopes are that they will fill us in better with the Stephanie Brown and how she became what she is, because that has the reintroduction of kind of a favorite fan character into the New 52 through the Batman Eternal is one of the exciting things about Batman Eternal. I hope that there's still something with this adventure with Killer Croc that Batman and Lieutenant Bard had that perhaps they can come back to and tease out more the meaning of what happened. But I don't know. And I think maybe the reappearance of Stephanie Brown at the very end of the book, after not seeing her for a while, and with them just sort of info dumping and throwing her back in after this with a big jump ahead in her character, made me look back at the rest of the issue in even a more negative light. So that might be partially healed as they fix up the Stephanie Brown aspects of things. I still basically like Simeone as an artist, but I did, again, it might be because it was rushed or something wrong with the script, but I did feel like there was a lack of clarity. A few other notes, I guess. I thought it odd. I didn't know the background with the warden and Commissioner Gordon, that the warden of Blackgate Prison used to be a cop, and Commissioner Gordon got her kicked off the force. That's very interesting. Now that they've just made up and become friends, I found that a little hard to swallow. In a way, we don't have enough about the background of all these characters. At least I don't, because I know wherever this warden comes from, I've missed all of that continuity sometime pre-New 52, I assume. Although I haven't read every Batman book in the New 52 either. So, but one thing with all this density that I've been noticing throughout, this huge history of Batman, and, sometimes you're reading Batman Eternal and you're saying, like, how could all of these characters be frequent players in his backstory that's supposedly only been going on for 5 years, at the start of Batman Eternal anyway, or the start of New 52, I'm sorry. That thought recently linked into my wondering, why would they call this Batman Eternal? Gotham Eternal, perhaps, would be slightly better. But anyway, I've decided, for me, the reason, my current theory of why they would call this Batman Eternal is, even though there's supposedly continuity and things have only happened supposedly in a limited amount of time, really Batman is this eternal, ongoing mythos and character of just endless, rich layers that has been going at least, 76 years now. So, to me, the eternal, counter to the idea of modern continuity, the eternal refers to the endless depth of Batman's story and his cast of characters and his backdrop of Gotham City. So I'm kind of thinking of it as Batman Eternal. So yeah, that's where I'm standing with Batman Eternal right now. Some other thought flew through my head and then flew away. But it'll be interesting to see what happens next issue. Will it be a Stephanie Brown story? I assume so. Talk to you all later. Bye-bye.